I'm so excited about this session. It is identifying scams targeting older adults and families. We have a badass cat. Are we on, Risha?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, I wasn't sure. Okay, so I'm going to introduce everybody briefly, and then everybody's going to kind of give a little bit more of their background. We have Christina Perkins from our Santa Barbara County, she's chief investigator from our Santa Barbara County District's Attorney's Office. Brian Coder, and our DA here, he's my personal true American hero. Jennifer Pitt, founder from Voice Against Fraud. And we have Julie Nephew, a senior lead attorney from AARP Foundation Litigation. So, Christina, can you share a little bit about your background?
Yes, Jessica, thank you so much for having me today. Again, my name is Christina Perkins. I'm the Chief Investigator of the Santa Barbara County District Attorney's Office. And just real briefly, because a lot of times people don't realize that the District Attorney's Office has their own small little police department. So my job in general is I oversee the Bureau of Investigation. In Santa Barbara, that's comprised of about 20 sworn law enforcement investigators. And we investigate any and every crime that comes to our office for prosecution. And then, more specifically, the reason why I'm here today is I have both a respect and passion for our financial crimes. Um, and it's something that I want to highlight in our community, and it's because it's such a growing problem. So, one of the things I do in addition to leading the Bureau of Investigation is I also have a weekly podcast called Scam Squad. It's a very quick 20-minute podcast, and it's just meant to educate the community and inform them on the recent scams that are happening. So, that's a very brief and short introduction to me.
Thank you, Christina. Jennifer, would you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Jennifer Pitt. I'm a certified fraud examiner with a background in investigations across law enforcement, adult protective services, and banking. I've always had a heart to help seniors. And so I created a company called Voice Against Fraud, where I empower older adults and professionals on how to avoid and protect yourself against identity theft, scams, and financial exploitation by people already in the victim's lives.
Thank you. Julie Nephew, would you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you again, Jessica, for having all of us. I am an attorney at AARP Foundation. I've been here for about almost 20 years, and I work on consumer protection issues and housing issues, reverse mortgages, and then a lot of other things. But we basically do a lot of class actions that that protect the interests of older adults. But today here I'm talking about fraud, and fraud is a growing problem, and there's not a lot of litigation options for folks. So I'm here to help people understand how to avoid them instead of trying to get results after they've been victimized.
Yeah. And I want to thank you all you ladies for showing up, but especially Julie, because Julie was very helpful and supportive in finding like Jennifer Pitt she'd recommended, and she gave us a couple other suggestions. But let's be real, Julie, I was stalking you for a while. So that is the
I
truth.
know you were, and apologize for not getting back to you so quickly.
Okay, so it's my job. So here's a theme just to ground everybody. If you think that it's not going to happen to you, if you think that fraud or scam or is not going to happen to you or your family, then you're a big target, right? We all have to be aware, and we have to look at some of the just the information that we're going to learn today, but just kind of stay alert. Everybody has to stay alert. We're gonna start with some real world scams, maybe something even that local that you're sharing or sharing on your show, Christina. What are the most common scams that you're seeing right now?
So broadly, the most common scams that we see, and this is statistical, so we were able to gather statistics both from the calls that we get here as well as from IC3, which is the reporting source to the FBI. And the number one scams involve phishing, which is those emails and texts. Now that's very broad because when you just say phishing is the number one scam, then you're really not digging deep because that can involve non-payment, like those messages that we receive saying that we owe a bill or an invoice that we owe. That could include those toll scams that people receive. that you haven't paid your tolls. So the phishing, but in general, phishing is the number one scam that we're seeing out there. Now, locally, what I'm seeing, and this is a newer scam that I've really been trying to get out to the community, is a scam that involves banks, and victims will receive calls or text messages or emails saying it's from their bank, and that they're doing an investigation, and that there's an internal investigation into the bank. And what this is doing is causing the victim to be suspect of now anything the bank tells them, they're not going to necessarily believe, and they're going to suspend their normal suspicion of scams and not trust the people that are trying to help them. So in general, what the scam is they'll receive the call from the bank, and in some instances, the bank will say, law enforcement is going to contact you soon, which is another hook that makes the victim think that it's legitimate. They'll receive a call, there's an internal investigation at your bank, your money's at risk, and then they'll receive a second call saying they're from law enforcement or from the bank security. They're told that they need to move their money to keep it safe. And that's involved in a lot of the scams, but that's the number one red flag that I hope people would listen to, is the second you're told that you need to move your money to keep it safe, that's a scam. In two situations, one of the situations recently, and this has happened in the last 2 months, with almost $100,000 loss total. So we're talking about big money here. One, the victim was told that it was fake money. When they went to the bank to withdraw some cash and they read the numbers of the cash, they were told it was fake. And a courier actually showed up at the bank to take that money from them.
Wow.
In order to protect their money. Again, this is all under the guise of protecting their money. The other one was they needed to move their money quickly, and they were told to download an app from another bank, which they did not bank at. Go to that bank, and because now with the tap option, you can access bank ATMs just using the tap and not having an ATM card. And they deposited money, or deposited cash, a large sum of cash, into the scammers' accounts. So to bring it back to what are the biggest scams we're seeing, just in general, it's those phishing scams, but locally and recently, the one that's really concerning me is this bank scam. The victims are receiving calls saying that their money is at risk and that they need to move it.
Christina, are these specifically, are they targeting, I mean, the seniors are a vulnerable target, but in these particular victims, were they seniors? Do they have family locally? Like, what's the profile of those people, if you can share that?
So the two I'm talking about specifically, they are seniors. I don't think that's why they were targeted. It's just happened to be that the two have reported to me they are seniors.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any evidence that the scammers knew that they were seniors. I think, like most scams, especially with AI, which I'm sure we'll talk about a lot today, that just there's the ability for the scammers to reach so many people. It only takes one or two to have that hook, and at a loss of hundreds of thousands of dollars. The scammers will put in 8 hours of work, and they'll make tens, 20s, $80,000 for that investment of time. But yes, these were specifically seniors that were victims.
Jessica, if I may,
Yeah.
the problem is statistically, younger people tend to be scammed more frequently. They fall for more scams, but they don't lose as much money. Older people, when they are scammed, tend to lose a lot more money.
Yes.
So the older people who are not as tech savvy, who are not on social media all the time, may be less likely to be victimized by some of these scams, just because they don't use these, they don't use text messages, they don't use email as frequently. But when they do lose money, they lose a lot of money because they have a lot of money.
Yes.
Right.
Maybe targeted for particular kinds of scams, but I agree with Christina that, these just generic scams that, they're targeting everyone and hoping to fish somebody.
Yes.
See, I remember back in the day, there's like a lot of like the bullpen rooms in the call centers, and they would, the issue there was that you couldn't really prosecute that, because there's different jurisdictions. So like if I had a bullpen or a call center that was scamming people in like let's say Arizona, they would call any state, call victims or potential victims in any state except for Arizona because of the jurisdiction between. So now you're saying that there's people that are literally physically meeting people in banks.
Hmm.
And so obviously the people that are coming and visiting the banks, like they're being recorded, right? Because there's cameras and things like that. So
Right.
how, now is that a profile that's their face and everything like that, or all other banks notified? Like what happens after that?
So that's a good follow-up question. So in this specific instance, when you have couriers coming to pick up cash, which happens unfortunately quite often, more than I realized until I started really just paying attention and focusing on scams these last year or so. And with couriers specifically, it's like I'll use it to Uber or DoorDash. While a lot of the couriers are involved in the scam, and they are one of the many criminals involved in the scam, they're not necessarily. And so it could be someone that was contacted that is told, is going to get paid a certain amount of money. What they need to do is go to this address, pick up this package, and then go to over here and deliver it. So with the courier scam, it's difficult, but the law enforcement is doing a really good job when they're contacted, right? And that's
Mhm.
that's
Yeah,
the
that's the
issue.
key.
We have an hour today, but we can dive into each
Mhm.
each topic we're talking about for an hour specifically.
Yeah.
But if law enforcement is contacted prior to the courier showing up, then we can do a legitimate investigation to determine if these couriers are involved. But the courier question is so complicated because yes, you're going to have. I thought the exact same thing. Oh my gosh, they met him at the bank. This is great. There's going to be video. It's in a public area. But the reality is it's not necessarily going to help find the perpetrators of the scam.
Mm. Scary. No, really
Yeah.
scary,
Jessica,
Frank. We're
the
gonna
other problem, Jessica, is that it's not just state to state. Many of these scams are international.
Correct.
They originate from, all over the world, and a lot of them use trafficked victims to perpetrate the scam. So they're basically kidnapping people and forcing them to do this bad work and, just get
Wow.
by. So, I mean, it's a very, very serious, it's not just the people who are victimized from the financial standpoint here in the United States. It's a huge, huge international problem.
Mhm.
Yeah, no. We're really gonna scare people. We maybe should have done this at the end of the day because people are gonna need a drink after this phone call.
We want to
Um,
empower people, not scare them. Hopefully everyone will feel
Exactly.
empowered when they.
Exactly.
Yeah, but we should be able to. So Jennifer Pitt, can you walk us through some scams and kind of like how are people reacting and kind of a little bit of like how do they get them to like how do they manipulate people to take action to kind of help these scam artists?
Yeah, so it's really critical to understand the psychology of victimization and that anyone can be a victim. These scammers are master manipulators at what they do. They basically prey on our emotions. They prey on hope, trust, fear, compassion, anything that we're going through at the time. And every victim that I've actually spoken to has said at one time during the scam that they thought it was a scam.
Yes.
But in the back of their mind, they also had sort of this internal battle of, but what if it's real? What if it's real?
Okay.
And so essentially what happens is when we're faced with a sense of urgency or fear, the natural reaction for our brain is panic. That's what
Hmm.
and I've been in this industry for well over 10 years. Anytime I get a phishing email, that's my natural reaction is, oh my gosh, my account's going to be closed. It's a natural human reaction, right? And then when you get that panic, if you have not prepared for that situation, then you react out of fear and urgency instead of critical thinking and logic. And your brain, when you're in this panic state, your brain basically says, we need to get your brain and your body back to this sense of homeostasis. So in the immediacy, get rid of that panic emotion. How do you get rid of it? And with a scam, unfortunately, that often means sending the money to a scammer. And that's what I really want to instill, is that anyone can be a victim. I've often heard things like, oh, and how could you fall for that, right? Like Christina talked about the courier and the cash, people getting out cash. What I've actually seen too is a lot of the same stuff that Christina's seen, but I've also seen sort of a twist on that, where instead of the scammer meeting or a courier meeting the victim at the bank, they're actually coaching the victim through how to withdraw that much cash through the bank. And then they're sending them images of their home. They're outside of their home saying, I know where you live. I'm going to meet you there. And recently in Arizona and a couple places around the country, they've arrested these scammers or couriers just outside people's homes to collect that cash.
Wow.
Yeah.
So these are for people that go, there's something off. I want to make sure, or they're calling their bank
Yeah.
in addition to, which, yeah, that's really scary. So, if you're being asked for your money and you're being asked for your personal information, and you have in the back of your head, I think this is a scam. What is it something that you should be doing, or if somebody's asking for that information?
Well, so if somebody's asking for that information, there are really three things that I like to do, that everybody should do. Is the first thing, ask yourself, is this odd? Does it sound odd? Right? If we talk about phishing correspondence, is there like grammar errors? Is there spelling errors? And with AI, when we talk about AI, there might not be anymore. Some of these look so legitimate you can't tell the difference, but ask yourself, is it odd? And then the second thing, ask yourself, how does it make you feel? Does it make you feel panicked? Does it make you feel this sense of urgency, like you have to act now? And then the other thing is, I created this framework called UACT, UACT, that is, the scammers want you to act. And every time I get an unsolicited correspondence, whether it's mail, email, text message, social media post, I go through this UACT framework very slowly. And it's U, urgency or fear. It might be they actually say the words urgent or act now. It might be they say data breach, or you have fraud on your account, something that has that sense of urgency. A is there's an ask for money or information that's usually in the form of a link or a button or a phone number for you to call. C is there are consequences if you don't provide that money or information. And this may not be overt. It could be something like you'll get arrested, you'll go to jail, or it might be just a reiterated sense of urgency that makes you feel like there's a consequence. And then the last thing is T. It always comes from a trustworthy source, or appears to come from that. Again, they fake the logos. It looks very legitimate. And using this framework can actually help you break that panic cycle, the brain's natural reaction to react out of fear, and it can help you react more out of logic.
Something happened to me. Well, the point is, like, just pause,
Yep.
just take a breath and pause, and ask, ask a friend, ask family before you kind of make it, and then, but this had happened to me before. I have a friend that I've had for years, and we've had email correspondence for years. And we recently signed an agreement with him, but it was like, so he's like even more old school than I am. And it's like, oh God, now I got to print this out and write, he's just not that tech savvy. And then about 2 weeks or 3 weeks later, I get an email from him to, like, electronically sign a form, and I open it up, and I just was like, this seems really weird for him. He's too, like, not technical for this, right? And I opened it up like an e-doc, and I was just about to, and I went, I don't think so. And I went back, I said, I forwarded to him, I go, did you send this to me? He goes, no, I've been hacked. Da, da, da. And I'm like, oh my God, thank God. Right. But, like, you think about this every single day, and you said, and Christina, we talk about the phishing. So internally our bank has little lessons every day, and if, it kind of gives us a little heads up, but also if something comes, we have a fish button. So how do I don't have a fish button on Google or my Gmail or something like that. If we think something's really suspicious, this doesn't seem right, who do we send these things to?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I think, there's not really a whole big answer. So if you think it is phishing, the best thing to do is obviously, like you mentioned, Jess, is have somebody look at it,
Mm.
get a second opinion. But if you have any inkling at all that it's phishing, I would contact the organization directly at the phone number you have for them and ask them about that correspondence. They might tell you that it's real, they might tell you that it's a scam, but if you have any inclination at all, call that organization and then delete it. If you become a victim and you do click on the link, you do end up being tricked into providing information, you can certainly report it to your local law enforcement, report it to your bank or whatever organization had that money. And then you can report it to ic3.gov, which is the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center.
IC3.gov.
Mhm.
Okay.
You can also put it on the AARP has a fraud watch network. And what that is a way for everybody in the country can look at on a map, where are people reporting particular frauds and what kinds of frauds are being reported in your area. And so if you report that you got a phishing email of this sort, or somebody called you and said you were going to be arrested or whatever, you can report that, and that will go up on the map, and then other people can look at that and say, hey, that's going around in my neighborhood or in somewhere in the country, and so I should be looking out for that kind of thing. And people can go on AARP's Fraud Watch Network just to keep track of what kinds of frauds are going on, so that it's easier for them to recognize them when
Yeah.
they do happen to them.
Yeah, we have to be vigilant. Giving me a lot of ideas. I want to ask you, Julie, what is how's AI changing the landscape, especially when we're thinking about seniors and vulnerable people? Like we all hear about the the adult child or the grandchild calling the grandparent. I need you to help me, or I'm in jail, or whatever it is. And now with AI sophistication, it really sounds like that person. So,
Well, AI is a total game changer. Last week the Federal Reserve Board had an emergency meeting because to warn the banks that they have to do more to protect people from fraud because of AI. AI has found, hundreds of software vulnerabilities that no one else had seen before, and criminals are using it, as Jennifer said, to write good emails instead of emails with a lot of grammar mistakes that are hard to see. People's voices are being duplicated, and it's indistinguishable from an actual person. There was an article, or in the last week, I've seen like 6 or 7 of these, little videos of, well, it sounded like my daughter had been kidnapped and I had to send the money. And so it was her voice. I know it was her voice. It's the grandparent scam where, the grandson calls the confused grandmother and says, hey, it's your grandson. Don't you remember me? And, convinces the grandmother that it's him. That
oh,
those days are gone. Well, they're still out there, but now people can actually duplicate voices, send actual, photos, because everyone's got, their photos are online. My profile picture's online. Anyone could say, hey, that's Julie. It has to be. Recordings, it's easy to get that stuff. And so people are a lot easier to manipulate with AI because it's so hard to detect.
And I actually, to your point, Julie, I recently attended a deepfake boot camp. So it was essentially like 2 hours every day for a week where we learned about deepfakes and how to create them. And within about the first couple hours of the class, I was able to create a voice deepfake that was for this grandparent scam. And I actually called my mom because I didn't want to freak her out. And I said, I'm in this class. I created this deep fake, this voice deep fake, and I played it for her. And it was, I typed in a message about a kidnapped, I was kidnapped. The kidnapper wants ransom. All I said was a sentence of, hello, how are you? I'm good. I didn't say anything else. I was able to hit a button very quickly, and it translated my voice to that text. And my mom, who is a retired chief security officer, said that if I would not have told her that it was a scam, she would have believed it. It was that good.
Right. And how many calls do you all get, or do we all get every day where we pick up the phone? Hi, this is Julie. How are you? You know, whatever, you know.
Hello, yeah, and then they hang up, and you're like, oh shit.
Yep.
I'm
But
a
you know, you don't
salesperson. I
expect
always
just
answer
to
the
say
phone.
hello. You know, you don't expect someone to get the ability to duplicate your voice out of just saying hello. This is Julie. You know, that's amazing that they can do that.
So we're talking about these scams, and it's like it just breaks your heart. I know I saw the emails going back this last week about somebody had contacted my colleague Mark, and you guys all chimed in. After somebody loses money, how recoverable is this? In what cases is it ever recoverable?
So unfortunately, it's not very recoverable. Sometimes if it's reported to law enforcement or IC3 within 24 or 48 hours or the bank, then there is a possibility that it can be recovered. In fact, there's been great strides in the ability to recover money. So I'm a lot more hopeful than if you would have talked to me 6 months ago, a year ago. A year ago it would have been, it's gone, you're never going to see it again. Now time is of essence, and everyone needs to remember, because quite often, just back up real quick, and I think Jennifer mentioned this earlier, is I agree that during the scam, I don't think I've ever heard of a scam that at some point during the scam, though, they started thinking this feels like a scam. And so majority of the time, they will identify they were scammed within hours, or maybe overnight. They'll sleep on it and wake up and realize it, but it's very quickly that people realize they're scammed. So the important part is to report it then, and to report it to the right people. We give our scam number out, but I always am telling people we're not the investigative agency that's going to help track your money down. We're the ones that will give you resources, but if it's been within 24 hours, 48 hours, you have to report it to your bank, you have to report it to your law enforcement agency, and you need to report it to IC3. I've seen IC3 really have some good results because of, I think Julie brought it up, is these are international scams. A lot of the suspects are overseas. These accounts are not here. It's not a local scam. It's not, Wells Fargo in Santa Barbara or a local bank that's going to be able to it's not one of their accounts of one of their customers that's committing this scam. So recovering money is difficult, but it's not impossible. And so just making sure that you report to those three people, your bank, law enforcement, and IC3, will give you a significant percentage in better probability that you could recover your money, but it's still very, very low. And to Julie's point earlier, is it's prevention, right? It's so hard to recover after the fact. We have to prevent people from sending that money to begin with. And that's really the number one way we're going to stop scams, is just preventing that action and preventing people from becoming victims.
Yeah, Christina, I think one of the hard parts with the prevention side is, for so long, for years, we've said you'll know it's a scam because there'll be a lot of grammar errors. You'll know it's a scam because they'll ask you to click on a link, right? You'll know it's a scam because there'll be this sense of urgency. They'll ask you to do things in real time, and some of those things just aren't true anymore, right?
Right.
There might not be grammar errors. The emails might look exactly identical. And what I'm seeing is organizations are actually starting to send to to help their customers, or they think they're helping their customers, they're sending correspondence that looks like a scam, asking you to click on a link, right? And so that's a big battle too, is us telling organizations, if you're going to send correspondence to your customers, make sure it doesn't look like a scam. Make sure it's not asking them to click on a link.
Yeah. And that's a good point. Like I believe industries, across the fields have been doing a really good job or a better job at preventing scams on these cryptocurrency ATMs. Now there's a message that comes up that you have to acknowledge before you deposit money. On Zelle, there's a message that comes up, that pops up, that gives you scam indicators that will hopefully kind of snap people that are about to become a victim out. But the prevention is really the key important part, because once that money is transferred or given to a courier, given to put into an ATM, transferred, it's very difficult to recover that.
I also want to mention that, while we're talking about scams that are perpetrated by unknown people, there's also still a lot of exploitation of older people by people they know, family members, new friends, people who are their new best buddy. And go to the bank with them and help them take out their money. Those people are also bad, and they can, older people may not want to call the police on their son or daughter or grandchildren or whatever, but they need to do that if they're going to protect themselves.
Yeah.
So what can we do to protect other people, our parents, right? There's a couple of things we talked about, like the donotcall.gov. You can register for that. We learned about Drop yesterday, and that is California, which I think is amazing. You can register yourself. You can register somebody else, which makes it a lot easier for, with people that are doing for their parents or loved ones, which protects you from all data brokers, like over 100 data brokers, which I think is amazing. And California, I guess, is the only state doing it right now, which it makes it like, oh, wow. Well, then they're going to just focus more on the other states, right? That's what I was thinking. But what do you foresee happening as far as, legislation and things that are happening to start protect people? Like what is out there right now? Like because what are the legal parameters on to protect people? Are there's or were they starting to talk about to protect people? And does that mean like we have to all register for something? Does that mean that we have to, um, you know, design our passwords, or going to get another type of platform that we have to secure all our information on? What is it going to look like?
So I think that, obviously that's a huge question and a can of worms, but there are other countries right now that have a lot of scam protections in place. There's a lot of people have pushed legislation to get scam protections in place. One of the issues right now is in the US, financial institutions, unless falls under a certain regulation, usually involving credit cards, financial institutions are not required to reimburse victims and of scams. And so what happens oftentimes is someone will call their bank and they'll say, oh, I was scammed. And then the bank will say, we can't reimburse you. You shouldn't have sent money. And I've actually heard language like, you shouldn't have sent money, or this is your fault. And I think the first thing that we need to address is the words and how we're actually describing these scams and describing victims. It is not the victim's fault. And anyone who's out there that's been victimized, it's not your fault. Anyone can be a victim. Changing the words, I think, is the start. So instead of saying the victim gave money and it's the victim's fault and they should have known, flip that language to the suspect used predatory tactics to trick the victim into giving this money. When we start doing that, it basically is going to train society and regulators that this is a predatory crime. It is not the victim who's just falling for it, who's gullible or anything. This is predators that are actually attacking us. So I think that's where we really need to start.
Yeah, and back to what Julie said is like, sometimes, we see this, there's like 7 signs of elder abuse, and one of them is financial. Sometimes people self-abuse. Um, And then there's the family members, like number one financial abuser is a family member. So here you have the predators, and then you have the situations where an adult child or a family member is accessing somebody's information. So what happens in that instance when it wasn't somebody that was got scammed, but then a family member, somebody like retrieves somebody's password internally, like in their family situation? Like, how do people handle that?
And a lot of that is people think that it's civil. If it happens in your family, even scams, people say it's civil, it's not criminal. It is criminal. So understanding that it's criminal, that's, that I think that's the first thing.
And
Yeah,
being willing to prosecute. That's a huge barrier to people protecting themselves because they don't want to turn in their family members.
Yeah, when we talk about financial elder abuse from a family member, a caregiver, that's really a different topic. Or it isn't, it is a different topic. And there's a lot more that we can do locally to protect people, to enforce that. That is a crime that we can prosecute at the Santa Barbara County District Attorney's Office. That is a crime that we will investigate. Jessica, you mentioned, Deputy District Attorney Coda. He's excellent resource for our community when crimes like that happen. So those are a lot more, those, if they're reported, those will most likely receive the investigation they deserve. But on a different note, like, training is so important on the law enforcement side, and we can do better, and we are trying to do better to stop that patrol level response that may look like it's civil just because of lack of understanding of these complex laws, because these are complex laws when you're talking about trusts and deeds of trust and real estate, that law enforcement, while we're extremely knowledgeable, you can't expect someone that works patrol to know every single law. And so really teaching law enforcement and encouraging law enforcement agencies to get a little bit of training so you don't do that. It's civil. I've started recently to start a elder abuse symposium, and one of the classes is literally called "No, It's Not Civil," and that's meant to let law enforcement know, hey, these are the red flags you need to look, because it's easy to need to go to the next call because the next call is an assault, and you know what to do there. You know how to arrest that person. It's not as easy to identify these little indicators that an elder may be the victim of financial elder abuse. But to your point about how do we stop scams, it's we don't know, because otherwise we would do it, right? But yes, legislation is really important. I think accountability from companies, there needs to be a balance. Do banks need to take scam loss? No, but do they need to put something maybe on the front end that protects consumers a little more? Maybe. We have to remember that scams it's an industry. It's a structured crime for profit. It's billions and billions of dollars are lost in the United States.
In fact, I saw a quote the other day from Forbes that says that international cybercrime has the gross domestic product, third largest gross domestic product in the world, after the United States and China. It is an enormous, I mean, organized crime isn't, a drop in the bucket compared to that. So,
and I have hope, because of just the pure dollar amount, that it's going to start getting the attention it deserves. It just hasn't yet. And thank you to people like you, Jessica, that are making this a priority to have people on to talk about it. Now, one thing that I haven't heard yet, but I'm hopeful, is we talk a lot about just the fear, the AI, our elders being victimized at a higher rate, especially with dollar amount, just due to the fact that they usually have accumulated more wealth. They have access to homes, perhaps. It has a lot of equity. I really, truly encourage everyone, our elders specifically, to embrace technology. Be curious about it. Don't let AI scare you to the point that you withdraw and you don't know anything about it. Like, learn what these new tactics are, understand what it is, because that's how you're going to identify where you're in the midst of that scam, that you have that emotional reaction. If you start knowing just the social norms behind social media, the norms behind how a technology is supposed to be used, how a company will communicate with you through that technology. That's going to be a key piece on preventing scams, and withdrawing from technology or withdrawing from society because you're fearful is going to make people at risk more from being scammed. And that's something that I really, really try to focus when I speak about this, is I want everyone to feel empowered. Like, learn about AI. Yeah, it's scary. That voice, that's super scary, but learn about it. Learn about how that could happen and know, because that will make you that you won't be as fearful. You'll be more curious.
Mhm.
I
I
think
think,
also another really good point is that we need to be talking about it more. I think, we need to reach out to the people we know and, every day, hey, did you hear about this new scam? And don't answer the phone if you don't know that phone number. And, yeah, that guy sounded like a very friendly guy and he's willing to chat with you, but that's not a good idea. Um, even I remember a couple of summers ago, I had a conversation. My mom was talking to some guy from India who, I'm like, no, 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 no. You cannot. Well, but I wasn't telling him anything. You just told him about your grandchildren. You just
yeah.
told him about this other stuff. And, well, but he just seemed like a nice guy, and she's a former doctor. She's well educated. She just didn't
Well,
understand.
we're so out of nice people. She probably was
Right.
just thirsty for it. So, but what was he talking to her about? What did he
Just
talk to her about?
daily stuff. Just he'd call every now and then and talk about whatever. And
And
she'd try to say, you need to get a better job. You need, this
Oh
is,
my gosh,
I mean, trying to help him.
just a
It,
random
it's
person.
just being friendly. Friendly people are really hard to ignore. And
Yeah,
that's
my
the romance scam too.
yeah,
Gosh, I love you. I want to be with you, but oh, sadly, I'm trapped in this terrible situation and you need to send me some money so I can get out, so I can come and be with you. I mean, who doesn't want love? Who doesn't want all that?
yeah.
It's really hard to resist. This is psychological manipulation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the romance thing. I've been in senior care for a long time. We had a client who was victim of this, and somebody was extorting money from her. This was in San Luis Obispo County, and that person was in law enforcement. He was a police officer that was doing the romance scam. It was, yeah,
Wow.
unbelievable. Unbelievable.
What county?
So San Luis Obispo.
Oh, wow. Local
Yeah.
ish.
Yes. I'm a marketer, I'm a networker, I'm immediately thinking, I know that you have your podcasts. You have one, Christina, Jennifer, you have one, and Julie, you mentioned that there's the AARP of like fraud hotline, or there's a link that you can look in and see what's going on locally. I'm thinking, how do I get people like you, especially you, Christina, locally? I mean, I could get you in, the senior communities,
Mhm.
not just for the people that are inside of them, but, they can have uh, assemblies or presentations where they want to always bring people, to visit their communities. So there's Parks and Rec Center here, or Jason Bryan, things like that. So what is it that you think that we can do in order to get the information, more boots on the ground? What would be helpful to ARP and you, Jennifer, and even here locally, Christina?
I'll let Jennifer start.
Yeah.
I think just getting the word out about the need for scam and fraud protection. For me, I speak at senior centers, I speak at churches, I speak anywhere where seniors are, and I do sort of these deep dives into identity theft scams and financial exploitation. And, wherever we can get the word out, that's what we need. We can't do this alone. And I think that's what, Christina, you mentioned. We need to get social media companies involved, telecom companies involved, banks involved, law enforcement involved, get everyone on the same page to where everybody is, wanting to combat this problem, and just communicate more about that. I know one of the issues when I was in law enforcement is law enforcement and banking didn't really work well together. So we actually created a group that was informal information sharing where law enforcement and banks would meet regularly together to share information. We need more of that. We need more of that with the senior community as well and care professionals as well.
Okay. Julie, anything that we can help with
Well,
AARP?
AARP has got state offices in every state and Virgin Islands, Guam, and Puerto Rico. And we have regular outreach sessions. And so anyone who wants to get involved can certainly contact their state offices. But there's also the Fraud Watch Network, and we have a call center that people call into in Colorado that anyone can call in, but it's located in Colorado, and you can report your scams. There's also support groups that you can join if you have been scammed, so that you can feel like you're not the only one who's been victimized by this practice. But reporting scams helps everyone else see where they are, what's happening, how they're becoming more sophisticated. Take screenshots if you get a text message and send them in. Report everything you get from even if it's a tiny scam that you didn't fall for, report it, because then more people will understand it and will be able to track it better.
And then again, where we're reporting it to is
The IC3 or
IC3
the network or anywhere your local law enforcement report it.
Okay. And Christina?
Yeah, so from a law enforcement perspective, like I show up everywhere I'm invited. So like you said, Jessica, right, I will give a speech to everywhere I'm invited. The reality is there's so many, like when you look from it from a government perspective, right? The district attorney's office is a government agency. We're funded by taxpayer dollars. Adult Protective Services is a government agency funded by taxpayer dollars. I don't hear much from the community to our elected officials that this is something that they want money to be diverted to. I do this because I care about it. I'll go on my weekends, I'll go in the evenings on my time, and I will devote it. But the reality is government agencies, we don't have a lot of funding or resources to focus on this.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I think that from a government perspective, if you are a community member and you care about this, you need to let your elected officials know. Like luckily, District Attorney John Savernock is extremely supportive and understands the need in our community for this type of outreach. But on a larger level, I don't know that there's much education out there or input from the community that this is a topic that they want focused on and where they want resources to go.
I think a lot of people are embarrassed when they fall victim to a fraud and they keep it to themselves. They may not even tell their children that they've lost, $500,000 to a fraud. That's because they're afraid that they will, lose their financial and all their independence. They won't be trusted. It's embarrassing.
Well, I think there were some statistics you had on that, Julie, right? Did you have some statistics on it?
Well, it's just a blame. People feel like they've been blamed, and the people underreport generally every kind of fraud, every kind of scam, every kind of crime is underreported. It's not a focus on, collecting the numbers, but the problem is that means that it's also underappreciated. And people who do know that there are scams out there might feel overconfident. They might think, hey, I can recognize a scam. I can stop this. Well, yes, you might recognize a scam one day, and then the next day you're kind of going through, we all scroll through our emails and just click on every link that comes up. There are days when I do that. I'm like, wait a minute, don't click on that link. Just because you open an email, you just go into this like zone and you just start clicking on everything. You can't do that.
Autopilot. You're on autopilot.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And to that point too is I think it takes more than, Julie's like people are overconfident, but you also need to care for your friends and family and loved ones. And I've had a few instances from acquaintances and people that when I've done talks, and I'll talk about the romance scams and specifically the celebrity romance scams, just because it's an easy laugh and you can talk, I make the joke that Kevin Costner always contacts me because he wants to meet me. And I'll have people come up and say, oh, my friend that has the same romance scam. She thinks she's talking to so-and-so, right? But there isn't a follow through with that. And so I say, okay, well, have they sent money yet? Oh, no, no, no. Well, yes, they have. That's what the scam is. It's going to get there. So following up, you may be confident you're not going to be scammed, but please, if you hear of a friend or an acquaintance or a family member that might be involved in a scam, don't just tell them once it's a scam and then not follow up, because you may make that difference. And by following up with them, you may stop the scam before it happens.
And it is really hard to convince people.
Yes.
It is.
That is a scam. Those romance scams, or, the new best friend who's going to help them, it is really hard to convince people that is a scam, that person is extorting money and using them. It is really, really hard.
And that's why I think it's important. Both of you have said, talk to your friends and family. So if you have a new relationship, talk to your friends or family.
Yes.
That's at the point, where they can intervene and say, well, this sounds odd. If you're the friend that is saying this sounds odd, be careful what you say. Don't say, come on, this is obviously a scam. How could you possibly fall for this? It's Kevin Costner. Come on. Because they will be in the emotional state that's like, okay, now you essentially injured my ego. Now I'm going to do it anyways. And that's essentially what happens psychologically. So be careful what you say. Anyone can be a victim, be supportive, and be there for that person.
Right. And they're not going to admit that they sent money already.
No, they won't.
They will have done it, but that doesn't mean they're going to admit it.
Yeah.
Right. This is like all the people that go, oh, I just won this from the casino. Oh, I won it they always tell you when they win. They never tell you when they lose.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Exactly.
I recently was speaking with a close friend who's a senior law enforcement officer in another agency. And he was talking about how his parents think that they're talking to Elon Musk. And the lack of sense of urgency was shocked. I said, well, have they sent money yet? He's like, they don't have any money. And I didn't. It's like, well, do they have a home? Do they have, do they own their home? Do they have equity in their home? Because scammers are going to find it somehow. And if his parents think they're talking to Elon Musk, there's going to be a money ask, and it's going to be an investment, and it's going to sound really, really good. And so it's so important to just not brush that off.
And they're also after.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Jennifer.
They're also after information, not just immediate cash.
Mm-hmm.
So they might try to get more information. I think it was you, Julie, that mentioned about the conversation where they're just finding information about the person. They can use that information later to take over somebody's account or to scam other people. And so they are not just after that, that quick dollar, that cash out. They're after your personal information, your social security number, information about you, your photos, anything that they can use.
So we had somebody, Eli Bear, if you want to raise your hand again, if you actually want to say something, because somebody, I'm going to allow them to talk if they want to. Eli, did you want to ask a question? You have to unmute if you want to ask questions.
Yeah, here I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. So I just put a question in the chat just because it's scams have become so prevalent in our practice as financial planners. It feels like it's taking over a lot of the work that we do. So we're always on the lookout for ways to prevent that. And a lot of our clients are very unsatisfied or frustrated when the answer to preventing scams is just don't pick up the phone or don't do anything, because they feel like they're being bombarded every day with phone calls. So my question was specifically on the voice deep faking issue. I took off my personal voicemail recording because I was worried that even though I don't pick up the phone for numbers I don't recognize, they'd get my voicemail recording, use that for a deep fake, and then call my bank and get through. I also don't use voice verification for my financial institutions anymore for the same reason. I was wondering if that was adequately preventative or paranoid or a little bit of both.
Nothing wrong with some good paranoia, is what
Yeah.
I say.
So I actually did the same thing. And the reason I did that, Eli, was I had somebody call me. I was expecting a call. And so I answered the phone and I said, hello. And nobody said anything. So I hung up. A different number called me again. I didn't say anything. I heard my voice saying hello, the
Oh my God.
same word that I just said. So that scared me enough to where I took off my voicemail. And so now it's the generic Autobot voicemail. But the reality is, most of us have something somewhere in our lives on social media that is 30 seconds of audio. That is all somebody needs at this point is 30 seconds of audio to do a convincing deep fake. So the best thing that I would suggest for voice deep fakes is for your financial group, your organization, or within your family is come up with some sort of code word or phrase that's unique to you all, or something that only you all would know, like a fun fact that happened when you were 3 years old or something that's never been on the internet. And that way, when you get that call of somebody claiming to be you, or somebody else gets that call claiming to be you, then you can use that code word to verify.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Right on. We had a caller. Um, we only have a few more minutes and we're going to prepare for our next session, which is one of our sponsors. This is Ann Shear, and she's talking about the importance of long-term care insurance and long-term planning. So if you guys want to connect for that, I'm totally, Christina, I have so many ideas to help you here locally. I'm happy to help you. I know that some of the participants are going to be reaching out to you guys to help their network and their organizations. What's one thing that people should start doing right now to start protecting themselves?
So I think the number one thing is what I already mentioned is embrace technology. Don't be afraid of it,
Mhm.
and educate yourself and just dive into the education portion about scams and technology in general.
And I would say know where your information is going and protect your information. Even though your information may already be on the internet, you should still protect it from going to someone else. So freeze your credit if you are not going to try to get a new loan or new credit, and understand where your information is going, who's getting it. There is no reason that a rewards company, like a CVS or Walgreens, needs your birth date for rewards. So just be careful about what information you're giving out.
Right, because data breaches are everywhere, but
Everywhere.
I also I'll make another plug for AARP's Fraud Watch Network, because reporting is key, and teaching other people what's going on, and keeping people alert to what's going on, and keeping up to date about what's going on is really, really important. And
Can
being
you,
part of a community is important.
now you said you could look up the fraud watch. Can you sign up for the fraud watch? Can you get
Yes,
fraud
and you do
alerts?
not need to be an AARP member, so you don't have to worry about that. It's aarp.org, and you can just just do a search for Fraud Watch Network, and it'll take you to a page that addresses all of the, shows you where to sign up for support groups, or how to look at a map of your community to see what's going on in your community, or how to call for, if you've been defrauded, how to report it, how to call people for assistance, and get answers. And we have been able to help people get money back from banks. Every now and then it's possible. It's not out of the question, but it's really, really hard. So you got to really be on the ball. You got to report right away, and you really got to reach out to people about it.
Right on. Well, this was a jam-packed hour. Thanks for making it easy for me. This was so interesting. And I'm totally dedicated to helping all you ladies. Thank you so
you.
much. I will be in touch. I'm sure you're going to get a lot of contacts from a lot of the people that were participating today.